If starting an essay and studying for an exam feels impossible, it's not always a motivation problem. In fact, it's most likely executive function. And for students with ADHD, that struggle of figuring out how to start is what most schools overlook. Hi there, my name is Presh, and I share tips and tricks to help students and families feel less overwhelmed and more in control. In this video, I'm diving deeper in how executive function tutoring makes that possible for students with ADHD. Executive function skills are a set of skills that help you do things like studying for an exam, doing an assignment before it's due, applying for college, applying for a job, organizing your ideas, and more. The best analogy I can give you is for you to think of executive function skills like the CEO of your brain. These set of skills are specifically located in the prefrontal cortex, and it's in charge of planning, time management, task initiation, organization, prioritization, emotional regulation, and more. If you're interested in learning more, I have a video that dives deeper in this topic that I'll link in the description. How does executive function relate to ADHD? To better answer that question, we first need to define what ADHD is. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. For those who are diagnosed with ADHD, some of their challenges may be 1. Easily feeling distracted, 2. Difficulties sustaining their attention, 3. Forgetting deadlines and their to-dos, 4. Having messy backpacks and desks, and last but not least, procrastination. Personally, I am not a fan of ADHD being coined as a disorder because it already implies that something is wrong with you. For 5+ years, I've worked with students with ADHD, and I've learned that there are systems in place that actually exacerbate the procrastination, poor planning, disorganization, and more of their challenges. Think of this scenario for a moment. We have a teacher and a student, and the teacher assigns homework to the student, but there's no deadlines. Believe it or not, we work with some schools that have that as part of their model. I don't know why, but it's part of their model. And from what we've seen, this lack of structure makes it so difficult for students to actually know when to start their homework because there's no deadline. The takeaway here is it's very easy to judge a student from the outside, especially if you're seeing that they have messy backpacks, messy notes, they're not turning in their homework on time, they're not studying in time, and so forth. It's so easy to label them as lazy, unmotivated, insert negative adjective here. But if we really look at it from their perspective, we might start to see that there are things in their day-to-day that make these challenges more and more real. Now that we know what ADHD means, let's go back to our original question of how does executive function connect with ADHD? Based off of a research in the Journal of Child Psychology, they found that 89% of children with ADHD had executive function challenges. If you're interested in learning more about that research, I'll make sure to link that in the description below. The top 5 common executive function challenges that we see from students with ADHD in the classroom are misplacing their physical worksheets, studying for an exam the night before or day of, having missing assignments pile up alongside their upcoming work, experiencing difficulties with breaking down a project into smaller tasks. So think like an essay or a science fair project, and feelings of being unsure and unmotivated on how to start their work. Now that we know how executive function and ADHD connect together and how they manifest in the classroom, I think it'll be helpful if we explore evidence-based solutions that can support students with ADHD to overcome those executive function challenges. What is executive function tutoring and how can that help? Executive function tutoring is the intersection of coaching students to develop systems that help them overcome their executive function challenges and academic tutoring. I think the best way to understand what executive function tutoring is to look at it from a scenario. So let's go ahead and imagine a student and their executive function tutor, and they're working together for 60 minutes. This student has an upcoming math exam and English essay, and they haven't started studying for that math exam or writing for their English essay. And catch this, they have 4 days until their math exam and their English essay are due. So what does executive function tutoring look like in that scenario? First, we want to ask them which of the two is most difficult for them to do on their own. Let's say it's the English essay. Now that we know it's the English essay, our next goal will be to get started on that with them. Because they haven't started the English essay, it is really important to review the instructions, the prompt, and the rubric with them. Once they've done that for 5 minutes, we would check for understanding by asking them questions like, what's the prompt that you have to write about? How do you think you can get an A on this essay? What do you think is going to be the most difficult part about this essay? Once you've checked for their understanding on what they think they need to do, then that's where we can really get our hands dirty and start working on the essay. So then we will go on the Google Doc with them and encourage them to think out loud, to get their thoughts into paper. What we've seen with our students with ADHD is that many of them are verbal learners, which means that they can process a lot by thinking out loud. Knowing that that is their strength, when we're on the Google Doc, we will ask them questions and document their thinking. And in that process, we might also teach them how to use voice to text so that we can coach them towards being independent and using these tools that best work for their learning styles. So let's assume after 10 or 15 minutes, we have a bunch of bullet points with their ideas on how to write this essay. Then the next step is to come up with an essay checklist. A lot of schools share essay checklists with their students, so ideally we will use one that they currently have, and if that's not available, we'll look one up together online and use that. With these essay checklists, it usually includes what needs to be covered in the introduction paragraph, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. Once we have that essay checklist, we want to go ahead and zoom in one of those paragraphs and ask the student to turn their notes into sentences. And in the last 10 minutes of our session, we want to go ahead and zoom out and think big picture. Thinking big picture in this scenario means 3 things. 1, we want to check in how they want to game plan finishing this English essay. 2, we want to know how they want to start studying and when they want to start studying for that math exam. And 3, we want to know what support and resources and accountability will they need leading up to their deadline. By the end of our time, ideally students feel a weight off of their shoulder because they started something that they thought was a big thing, which it is, and they've also made a plan for the other big things that they have for the week. And if needed, they have their executive function tutor to hold them accountable. In short, executive function tutoring can help students with ADHD and executive function challenges because we are addressing their real-time challenges. We are providing the content tutoring that they need, and we are coaching them to develop a game plan and a system to work towards their difficult big assignment. All of this is meant to address their challenges around poor planning, disorganization, lack of task initiation, task management, and more. With that, let me know in the comments, what are the executive function challenges you're seeing in your child, and what are the ways that's helping them overcome them? If you're interested in learning more about the differences between executive function tutoring and traditional tutoring, then make sure to check out my next video. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Peace!